Ahoy, everyone. This is David Perry with my continuing series of interviews with colleagues, artists, friends around the world, talking about their work during this great pause of a year and how they get into the great return. And today, I'm delighted to speak with an incredible photographer, Francesco Cascavilla from Rome. Francesco, welcome.
Hi, David. Nice to be here.
So first, let's start off with the obvious. How are things in Rome right now vis-a-vis COVID? I know there've been a lot of new restrictions or renewed restrictions. What does it feel like to be in the Eternal City at the moment?
It's a very interesting situation because, Rome is still this beautiful country with so much history, city with so much history, but everything feels a little bit freezed. You have a little bit the sensation like to be in a big cloud where you don't really know what's happening, what's gonna happen. So it's still beautiful to be here, but it's a completely different experience than usually. But I'm sure it's like that in many, many places in the world right now.
It is, but of course, Rome is Rome. My husband Alfredo, who is Spanish, and I both, I think sometimes his parents kind of wince because they always ask us what's our favorite city in the world, and we always say Rome.
Really? Nice.
Um,
I'm glad. I'm glad.
so your work is, well, you've probably been told this before. The first time I saw it in connection with the book from Gingko Press, New Queer Photography, Focus on the Margins, it reminded me a bit in its tone and the texture of your work, almost Mapplethorpe-esque. There's a sensuousness,
Mhm.
an evocativeness to your work, not so much in its sexuality, but in the painterly way that it is applied. How would you describe your work in general, and specifically your work for this book, New Queer Photography?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy you mentioned Mapplethorpe because at the beginning of my career, but even let's not even talk about career. At the beginning of my studying, when I started first considering to be a photographer, Mapplethorpe was like such an icon for me. I remember me reading the book Just Kids from Patti Smith, in which she tells the story about her and Robert Mapplethorpe. And I was 19. I had just moved to Berlin, so I saw myself so much in their story. And what I really liked about Mapplethorpe photography, and it's something that I really think I took for me in my photography, is the sculpturalism. I don't even know if this is a word, but the texture and the tridimensionality of the figure in it. It's like the way that the light sculpt the figure. In a way, it's very similar to Caravaggio. I'm sure that Robert was inspired by Caravaggio as well. It's the way the light and the shadow, give tridimensionality to a figure, even if it's just an image, and bring it out. Yeah, so I think that this is something that was always important in my work, especially in my black and white work. And for this book, we have chosen only black and white picture. And so this is definitely an element. And you asked me a little bit how I can define my work, right, as a photographer, what I do with photography. And it's such a huge question for me. And it's also something that has changed with the years. When I first began, it was something, then it has become something else. And now I see that it's evolving, it's still something else. What is right now very important for me is to talk about something, is the message I want to give with a picture. I know, like, I have a very sensitive eye for beauty and aesthetic in general, so this comes very natural to me. But what I really want to do with my work now is to help people to open their eyes, to grow, to expand their vision of life, maybe to love themselves more. These are the important topic for me, and this is what I want to do with my art. Really, I want my art to be the tool to help people, to talk to people, and to talk about topics that for me are important.
Right. I read online that you described the experience between you and the subjects you photograph as a dialogue, a silent dialogue, but also a battle. what do you mean by that? And what are you trying to draw out of your subjects when you photograph them?
Good, good. This is also something that has changed so much. You know, I'm when I first started, I was a lot asking my models, the subject I was working with, to take a certain pose. You know, I was really like, okay, take this pose, move your arm like this, move your arm like this, close your eyes, la la la. And I feel now I'm much more in the flow. So the thing about like this button thing, it's maybe more something that I was connected to a couple of years ago. Now I really go much more with the flow, and it's really about playing. It's so important for me to have a connection with the people I work with the subject, with my subject, my model. I don't know how to define it, and to just play, to just have fun, and that's where things really get magical.
Yes.
I don't know if I answer your question. If I
No,
didn't.
no, I think you did. You know, it's interesting looking at the work of over 50 artists in this book, New Queer Photography, Focus on the Margins. And instantly, when I was looking at the book for the first time a couple of months ago, before I read you or read your bio, I was looking at the art and I said, I bet you Francesco has done fashion photography. There is a slickness, a sensuality to it. How has your work as a fashion photographer impacted your quote unquote artwork and vice versa?
That's interesting. You know, the thing is, like, I always loved fashion and fashion photography. That's maybe how my passion for photography started. I always had like Vogue, you know, and all this, like, you know, it's the cliche, you know, the gay guy with Vogue. And right. But it's true, I was so passionate about it. Like, and I actually first started as a makeup artist when I was very young. And so this obsession with beauty, especially the feminine beauty, was so strong in me. And then at the same time, I was studying art at school, you know, like drawing and painting, this kind of thing. And so in a way, I had this passion for fashion, and then the way I was expressing art was through drawing and painting, but not through photography. And so your question was about the connection, like the relationship between my interest for fashion photography and for art photography, right?
Correct.
And you know, I think I was always like a bit of a weird fashion photographer, because it was never so much about the clothes and the styling, although I loved it, but it was always about to tell a story, to give an emotion. And on some level, it is the same thing that I do with art photography. You know, my goal in a way, and if you will see some of my fashion project, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but my goal it has always been and still is to get almost to a meeting point, you know, in why with fashion photography we cannot talk about like important thing, you know, why we cannot play with it, why, I mean, and I'm sure there are a lot of photographers that do this, you know, and I think that's the direction where I always wanted to go. And that's why a lot of time in my fashion work I also used a lot of like queer model, you know, not non-gender, or you know, whatever that means, you know, because they have a look that for me it's very interesting. But this is also something very big in fashion and the fashion industry.
It's interesting looking at your fashion photography. There is a gender bending and edginess to your work that is almost unique. I dare say it's called the Cascavilla style. I mean, it's you never just photograph a man in a beautiful piece of clothing or a woman in a beautiful piece of clothing. Sometimes it's the man, the woman, the gender merges just in one image. Talk to me about the process of working on this book. What was it like working with Benjamin Wolbergs on this book?
No, it was nice. You know, what I really appreciate about Benjamin is openness, and what I feel, and I think this was always important for me. I always felt that for Benjamin, he really cared about this subject. I don't know why, but I always felt like Benjamin cares about this. Benjamin wants this book to come out because he feels that it's an important message, and that it's an important dialogue that we have to have, and that was what really pushed me to make it happen and to work with Benjamin. I think that's the most relevant thing for me.
Right. In our last few moments, talk to me about how this strangest of years, COVID, has impacted you personally, but also your work. I know when we first spoke, I believed you were going to be in Berlin, but now you're back in Rome. How has COVID upended life in Rome at the moment and your work?
Oh God. I feel like, I don't know, for me, this COVID moment has been, but I'm sure for a lot of people, for me, has been a moment about questioning everything. There were this security thing that we had, and we thought like, okay, the industry work this way. This is the way we can sell. This is like, or I don't know, I can do this exhibition, I can do this thing. And now everything is like shifted, like all the rules are in question. And so it has really been a moment of like questioning everything. And I trust that after this first crisis, new thing will come, because everything is shaking. And so it's like, after a earthquake, after everything is destroyed, then we can start to see things with new eyes. And I think that this is the direction world is taking, and I am taking. For example, I have started dedicating myself much more to music. That it was also something that in these last years was as a part of my creativity, but I never really had the time to really focus on it. And now with this COVID experience, I felt that it was time to really focus on it and to experiment with music. And also, I see that I had time to work on some very personal projects regarding photography also.
So I see the keyboard behind you. So are you a composer?
Exactly.
Are you a composer as well?
Yes. I write my own piece and I think. So that's my next step. I hope in a few months I will be able to release some songs, some music.
Yeah, so how long before we see a montage of Francesco's art and underneath Francesco's music?
I like to say 6 months. 6 months from now, from November 2020. So maybe spring. Let's see. I'm very optimistic. Let's say spring.
Great. Well, we look forward to it. Last question for you. What would you like people to take away from your work, specifically in the collection New Queer Photography, Focus on the Margins? What do you want people who see this work to come away feeling, since you say you want your work to generate emotion?
Yes. Once one of the last exhibitions that I did, that was here in Rome, the person, it was like an art critic who wrote a text about me and talking about my work. He wrote something that was so on point with what I do in my work, and actually I couldn't really see until he wrote it, and then I was like, "Fuck, it's true. This is what I do." And he wrote that. I hope I can put it as nicely as he wrote it. He wrote that in my work, I want to show things that a lot of time we try to hide, or we try not to look at, but the way that I show it is not in a judgmental way, and it's not in a provocative way, but it's about to show the beauty that is in it. And because I truly believe that there is a lot of beauty in queerness and genderness, and honestly, I think this was always my process. Like, I wanted to show people, hey, there's beauty in it. There's beauty in it. And I think that was actually my connection with fashion photography, because fashion photography, it's about beauty. And this is also what I want to show with my artwork. It's like, there's also beauty in it. Growing up in Rome, but I guess everywhere, but in Rome, being gay, being very sensitive, maybe very feminine in a certain way, I always had this, I always felt inside of me this stigma. Is it an English word, stigma?
Yes.
as if there was something wrong about me. And I realized that I couldn't really love this aspect that made me so special, you know, my femininity, my sensitivity, all this aspect. I couldn't really love them. I couldn't really see the beauty in it. And I think that what I've done through my work as an artist and as a photographer has been to show to the world and to myself, first of all, that there is beauty in it. So
Great.
I guess that's my message, definitely.
Great. We've been speaking with Francesco Cascavilla, photographer, now in Rome, one of the more than 50 artists in new queer photography focus on the margins from Gingko Press. I'm David Perry. Ahoy. Ciao.